Gunther finally has a WrestleMania match, and it could be connected to a much bigger story. We'll also check out what's the latest for Jimmy, Jay, and more. Starting things off with Gunther and this whole new situation, this last-second WrestleMania match announcement. Prior to the March 30th edition of Raw, Gunther had missed 3 consecutive weeks of television, which caused fans to really question WWE because how can a guy that retired 3 big stars over the last few months have absolutely nothing to do at your biggest event of the year? Thankfully, that concerning matter came to a close this week with the big reveal of what Gunther will be doing at WrestleMania 42. This all went down thanks to another segment between Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins. Adam Pearce came out to give Paul Heyman the news that the Boston police had dropped all charges against Seth Rollins and how Seth Rollins was medically cleared to compete as well. This led to Seth Rollins coming out to try and attack Paul Heyman once more. Another side note about Seth's appearance here on Raw was that the masked man gimmick officially appears to be over for Seth. For the first time since he returned at Elimination Chamber, Seth was no longer wearing the mask and the hoodie, which a lot of fans were pleased by because it really made no sense why Seth was continuing to come out masked up. Seth's theme song also played for this appearance on March 30th, and that was the first time his song had played since he returned as well. So Seth ends up hitting Paul Heyman with the chair, and it clearly seems like he's not done attacking Paul Heyman at all. Seth backs up for what appears to be a curb stomp on Paul Heyman, but before he can connect with it, Gunther saves the day for Paul Heyman and takes Seth out of the ring. Gunther puts Seth in a sleeper hold and points to the WrestleMania sign, pretty much confirming right then and there that this match was happening at WrestleMania 42. And just a few short moments later, Adam Pearce did make it official that it'll be Seth Rollins versus Gunther at WrestleMania 42. Now, fans are genuinely excited for the match itself, but something that a lot of fans are criticizing here, and rightfully so, is the lack of any real story going on. If it was Braun Breaker in that spot of saving Paul Heyman, then there would be no question about the story at all. That story would make sense, and the match would make sense as well if Braun Breaker saved Paul Heyman. According to reports, Braun Breaker is medically cleared to compete and could have wrestled Seth at WrestleMania if they really wanted. But it's being reported that WWE decided not to do Braun versus Seth because they didn't want to rush that feud. Obviously, Braun versus Seth was the original plan for WrestleMania 42, but Braun Breaker, in a perfect world, was supposed to be there on television over the last few months to build up that story and match. But, as we know, that was impossible for him to do because of his injury. So, instead of slapping Braun versus Seth together at the last second and rushing it, reports claim that WWE decided to save that match for later in the year so that they can flesh out the story some more and stretch it out. Now, taking that report into consideration, maybe it's possible that Braun versus Seth could even be a big program for SummerSlam 2026. So that's why they pulled the plug on Braun versus Seth. They just want to make the story more detailed before having that singles match. But it is good to know that Braun Breaker is medically cleared. That means there's a strong chance we see him return maybe as soon as the week after WrestleMania. But getting back to the main issue with Seth versus Gunther, and that's the lack of story. WWE didn't want to slap Braun versus Seth together at the last second, but they slapped Gunther versus Seth together at the last second, so what's the difference? Well, you're certainly right. At the current moment, there is no story between Gunther and Seth, but there is some very deep storyline potential there if WWE decides to use it. The story could be that Paul Heyman did not hire Gunther for protection. That was not part of Paul Heyman's plan. Gunther acted alone to save Paul Heyman from the attack from Seth Rollins. Gunther did Paul Heyman a solid favor right there by coming to Paul Heyman's rescue when Heyman literally had no one there to save him. Gunther took that hit for Paul Heyman. He stepped in front of Seth's crosshairs and handled him for Paul Heyman. And assuming that Gunther takes care of business at WrestleMania 42 and defeats Seth Rollins and then handles that problem for Heyman, it surely seems like Gunther may come back to Paul Heyman looking for a favor in return, or some other type of reward. Gunther did something for Paul Heyman, and now Gunther wants Paul Heyman to pay him back with another favor. And what could be that favor that Gunther wants? It's real simple and it basically writes itself. But Gunther could request for Paul Heyman to get him a match against Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar has always been a dream opponent for Gunther, so maybe Gunther taking care of Seth Rollins as a favor to Paul Heyman really opens up the path to Gunther versus Brock Lesnar. Paul Heyman's probably feeling grateful towards Gunther for saving him and everything that he did there with Seth. So he asks Gunther if there's anything he can do for him, and Gunther's request to Paul Heyman very well could be to get him a match against Brock Lesnar. And not just any singles match against Brock Lesnar, but a match against Brock Lesnar that features Brock's career on the line. Paul Heyman would most definitely be shocked at Gunther's request, but Gunther did help him out after all. So maybe Paul Heyman does grant that request for Gunther. And that leads directly to Gunther versus Brock Lesnar in a retirement match. If Brock loses, which he most definitely will, he would be forced to retire from WWE. And Gunther collects yet again another career to add to his collection, now making his list of retirement victims to include Goldberg, John Cena, AJ Styles, and Brock Lesnar. So looking at the story very early on here in week 1, it seems like that's exactly what they could be setting up here for the long haul. Gunther saving Paul Heyman and taking care of the Seth Rollins situation for him could be the bridge to connect all of this to Gunther versus Brock Lesnar later on this year. So yeah, as of right now, in the first week of April, Gunther versus Seth makes no sense and has no story behind it. But if they develop this narrative over time that Gunther did all of this just to get Paul Heyman to grant him that favor of facing Brock Lesnar, that could develop into quite the interesting story there. Because imagine if Gunther destroys Brock Lesnar in that retirement match, with Brock Lesnar headed out the door to go home. Maybe Paul Heyman is so blown away by Gunther's work that Heyman will stick by Gunther's side. Paul Heyman can officially manage Gunther in this entire career killer gimmick and be Gunther's advocate going forward as he continues to collect more and more careers from the locker room. So there's a lot of story potential right there. And March 30th definitely could have been the first night of a very long partnership between Gunther and Paul Heyman. So be on the lookout for that story to develop into something huge right there. Another heated situation this week was Jimmy and Jay debuting new entrance music on Raw. There was no heads up about it or anything else beforehand at all. Jimmy and Jay just made their Raw entrance to the new song, and everyone was confused because they were obviously expecting the song that Jay had been using over the last 3 years. Not only was the music new, but Jimmy and Jay no longer came out through the crowd. They just walked down the ramp. So it was a full makeover to their entrance, and the crowd was confused and upset. As far as the answer for why that original entrance and theme song for Jimmy and Jay was taken away, I think a lot of fans think that it's because of character evolution. Obviously, we've been seeing Crash Out Jay make a lot of appearances lately, and now they lost the tag team titles as well. So maybe Jimmy and Jay are going to a darker place, and that's why they had to get rid of that entrance. But what are your thoughts on today's story? Leave your comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.